Hey everyone. So yesterday the House Intelligence Committee had its hearing into the Russian connection, a look into all things Russia with Director of the FBI Jim Comey and Director of the NSA Admiral Mike Rogers. So the headline to come out of yesterday's hearing was, of course, the complete smackdown of Donald Trump's claim that Barack Obama had him in some way surveilled, tapped, bugged, call it anything you want. It was completely refuted in the hearing yesterday. And even though obviously that's the biggest news to come out of the hearing, it wasn't that big a deal to me because it was something of a foregone conclusion. The minute Donald Trump put out his tweets and couldn't or wouldn't offer any evidence to support those tweets, it was clear to me that there was nothing there. As disgraceful as it is to make allegations for which you have no evidence, only a complete fool would make allegations against a previous president for which he did have evidence but refused to share. Even Donald Trump isn't such a dunce that he would withhold evidence that would help him support his claim. So the minute he had no evidence, I knew there was no there. So that's done. Comey has closed the door on that issue. And the only thing that remains on that topic is, well, how will Donald Trump handle it? I suspect that he will do it in his typical fashion, which is simply refuse to talk about it anymore, the way he does with birtherism. You don't hear any more comments from Donald Trump about 3 to 5 million undocumented people voting in the election. No longer do you hear any comments from Donald Trump about people crossing the border from Massachusetts into New Hampshire to vote illegally. You just don't hear anything about those issues because they're phony, there's no evidence for it, and there's no benefit to Trump to keep talking about them. I suspect that's what he'll do here. So I want to focus on two of the more subtle issues to come out of the hearing, things that haven't been talked about as much as the big headline. The first thing I want to talk about is Jim Comey himself. Were I a congressman on that panel yesterday, here's what I would have asked Jim Comey. Director Comey, you have emphasized greatly today the importance of confidentiality while carrying out an investigation. First of all, you don't want to be in the position of smearing a target with a premature release of information when that target of the investigation may in fact be innocent. So the FBI wouldn't want to release information prematurely for that reason. You also wouldn't want to release information about a target because it might tip off the target as to where you are in your investigation and might allow him or her to cover their tracks better. So that would be poor conduct on the part of the FBI. And thirdly, you would not want to get involved in the politics of the day or be seen to be taking one side or the other in a political dispute that was going on. So for all those reasons, it's important to exercise sound judgment, to be discreet, to be circumspect in the conducting of an investigation. So given those principles that you've articulated so strongly today, Director Comey, how do you square that with your irresponsible and reckless intrusion into the 2016 presidential election 11 days before the election itself? Don't you owe the American people an apology? After all, Director Comey, while your news release 11 days before the voting began may have been more innocent and more well-intended than the actions of Russian hackers, by my reckoning, your actions were far more consequential than those of Russian hackers. How do you justify today, March 20th, this extraordinary step that you took during the election? Now, I don't know how Jim Comey would answer that question. He sort of prides himself on being a paragon of discretion and impartiality, somebody who conducts himself without fear or favor. So maybe he would offer a mea culpa. On the other hand, maybe he would try to justify his actions, which in my view will be judged by history to be as infamous as, for example, J. Edgar Hoover's attempts to ruin Martin Luther King's career. I'd like to hear him talk about it. Now, it's understandable to me why nobody asked him about it yesterday. In this setting, in this moment in time, in history, the Democrats saw him as an ally. So they didn't want to do anything that might tarnish Jim Comey yesterday or remind people about Comey's checkered history. But nonetheless, I think it's a question that deserved to be asked. Now, the second topic that hasn't gotten as much attention that I'd like to focus on is that of leaks. Leaks became a major source of discussion yesterday during the hearing. Republicans love to focus on leaks because it allows them to wax indignant about something and take the focus away from the actual information that we got from the leaks. They'd much rather focus on the presumed messenger than the message, because the message is so damning to this administration. So a kind of groupthink emerged yesterday where everybody was bashing leakers. Leaks will be the ruination of democracy. Leaks are terrible. I have a different perspective on this, and it can be stated very simply. There are leaks, and then there are leaks. Many leaks are bad. Some leaks are in fact good. So once again, I would ask Jim Comey, Director Comey, one of the most famous leakers in history, who we now regard as a hero, was the Associate Director of the FBI during the Watergate era, Mark Felt. He was a copious leaker who provided much of the information for Woodward and Bernstein's writings about Watergate. In fact, he was the individual who spilled the beans on the Nixon administration. Now, perhaps Woodward and Bernstein would have gotten there eventually without the help of Mark Felt, but he certainly expedited their search for the truth and brought Watergate to closure more quickly than would otherwise have occurred. My question to you, Director Comey, is, was Mark Felt, notorious leaker Mark Felt, a leaker and a criminal or a whistleblower? Is he a villain or is he a hero? What is your take on Mark Felt? And my point in asking that question is a simple one. Not all leaks are bad. For example, we have learned that Mike Flynn had contact with the Russians. We've learned from leakers that Mike Flynn talked about the Obama sanctions with the Russians. We have learned that Jeff Sessions did in fact talk to the Russians, despite his statements during his hearing to become Attorney General. Now, I would contrast those leaks with the kind of information that Edward Snowden put out, for example, where he gave methods and means by which we surveil terrorists, thereby allowing them to change their own means of communication to avoid detection by the U.S. government. Those are damaging leaks. Those are leaks that undermine our ability to counter terrorism and to protect ourselves. That's a completely different order of leak than somebody letting us know that high officials in the Trump administration have lied. Furthermore, news reports have also told us that early on, Mike Flynn was interviewed by the FBI. And the reports that I've read suggest that then National Security Advisor Flynn lied to the FBI about whether he had talked with Ambassador Kislyak about the Obama sanctions. Isn't lying to the FBI a clear felony? What about that? So my point today is that there are lots of undercurrents, lots of things embedded in that hearing yesterday, beyond simply the fact that Trump is a serial fabricator. We know that Trump is a serial fabricator, but there were other interesting cross currents going on in that hearing that are important to pay attention to. Just some food for thought. I'm Jeff Rowan. Thanks for watching.